So the quick version, The Sound of Music, the musical The Sound of Music is based on my family's story.
The hills are alive with the sound of music.
Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is C-Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 104 of Beer Not Just the Podcast. And today, it is a gorgeous, sunny Tuesday afternoon. We are here at the Von Trapp Beer Hall.
Von Trapp Beer Hall.
In Stowe, Vermont.
In Stowe, Vermont, at the Trapp Family Lodge in Stowe, Vermont.
You're really doing a good job. You've done this before.
I've done this once. Yeah.
We have Sam Von Trapp, son of the owner, and JP Williams, Brewmaster. Gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Hey, thank you.
For giving us
Really
an excuse
appreciate
to
it.
drink in the afternoon.
It's a pleasure. It is all mine.
JP only
yes.
drinks when we're doing podcasts. By the way.
That's it.
Yes.
That's how
He's a teetotaler every other day, or when his best friends are getting married.
That's it.
Yep.
Yep.
Only
That
two
is it.
times.
Yeah.
Yes.
And before 6-year-old football practice.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having us. This is fantastic. Let's start with what are we drinking right now?
Drinking the Helis Lager, which is our flagship. My dad created the brewery to make the Helis, and Helis in German just means bright. And I'll let JP. That's why we got JP
Yeah, that's
here. He can talk
it's
some
our
technical aspects.
your classic Bavarian town has a Helis. It's a session beer. It's low ABV, 4.8. As Sam mentioned, Johannes wanted that beer. It's a beer. It's there's no hiding your imperfections behind 300 pounds of hops and fruit additives and whatnot.
Lactose.
So it's bare bones. It's beer. It's how beer is made properly using the purity laws, and it's one of the brewmaster's favorite beers. So.
Fantastic. Being yourself.
Being myself.
Yeah. Oh, and brewmasters in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, my dad was going to only make the Helis when we started the brewery.
Right.
And then we said, well, we might want to make some other things. And now we make about 12 beers over the course of a year with our seasonals and specialties. Yeah. But this is our go-to, and again, it's the one that we drink most often because we're in here a bit.
Yep.
It is 4.9. Not to just be the
sorry.
brewmaster,
Yeah.
but I think it's 4.9. That's what it says on the label.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That works. Okay, amazing. So I didn't realize you had 12 different beers. That's a decent lineup.
4 year-round, 4 seasonals, and then
Yep.
4 specialties, which is basically an excuse to do like a mini seasonal sprinkled throughout the year.
I assume this is probably being this is early September. This is probably coming into big time for you guys, being a German-themed or Austrian-themed brewery with Oktoberfest and such.
Oktoberfest is by far the biggest seasonal that we do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's tis the time to drink beer outside with the beautiful weather. It's cooler nights and the beautiful foliage here in Vermont, but also the harvest time throughout the world, and a good hearty beer for a good hearty meal. So.
And it's getting cool enough, as you said, that I can wear my lederhosen at our Oktoberfest in order to do the ceremonial tapping of the kegs. And JP can't wear his lederhosen because I gave them away. Apologize. We'll get you more.
I won't probably fit them anymore. But
That is terrible.
Yeah.
You're going to need them, though.
I know. Yeah.
When is the Oktoberfest?
September 22nd this year. So
Okay,
our Oktoberfest consistently starts the same date as Munich.
Okay, that's
Although
the Munich.
ours is really a one-day event. I mean, we're celebrating Oktoberfest through the season, but whereas Munich is a 2-week plus event, ours is mostly one day.
Single day.
Yeah.
Why do they do it that day? Because all the ones in Quebec and Ontario and everything around, everyone's doing their events that day, and I always thought it was strange.
Yeah.
It's the 21st, 22nd.
So the reason Oktoberfest starts in September is originally it actually happened in October, but then when it became a 2-week event, because it's an outdoor event, because there's so many people,
You want to catch
they
this.
wanted to start it earlier in the season, because if they waited till October to start and went 2 weeks in, it could be getting pretty cold. Yeah.
Oh, very simple.
Educate myself online on that. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So let's get into the stories then. Maybe we'll start with JP.
Yeah.
How'd you get into beer? How'd you become a brewmaster?
I probably have a very similar story to a lot of people here in the States. That you go to your college, your local or faraway college, depends on where you went. I went to New Hampshire, being a New Jersey boy myself, so I'm closer to New York City where I grew up. We go to college, and what do you do in college? You drink. You wonder, and you find that good beer, and you find that good style. So what we did is we just decided to start homebrewing in college, and then after college, I came out and worked at Magic Hat for over a decade, and a lot of the brewers in Vermont. A lot of
They all went through there.
they all went through there, so we call it like the
Yeah,
farm
so-
league. That's where people, where you became. And I had some great friends, some great mentors that went through there.
Did you work with Matty O from?
I did, yeah. So he was
Great guy.
he was the head brewer when I was the packaging manager there,
nice.
and then Todd Hare, who owns Foam down at the waterfront, was the brewmaster. So it's a very small world.
That's cool.
And then Mike Gerhardt's up at Hill Farmstead. So there's our reach is strong. So my buddy who works in South Korea right now, he won it. I mean, obviously I won it because we make the best beers, but obviously, but I mean South Korea, they're having a lot of fun out
They
there.
like their beer in South Korea.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're starting to be a new thing out there.
Beer
right?
halls all over the place in South Korea.
Did they pick
Yeah.
a style? Did they run with German or they run with Belgian or?
I think it's just craft in general. I think they're
same
just
as
the
us,
beer
like
is just a
everything.
boom out
I
there.
think in
right now,
general
yeah.
they're more lager focused. Though it's one of the interesting things about the world is that whereas in the U.S. and in the U.K. there are a lot of ales drunk, but then you go in the rest of the world, lagers are
lagers, eh?
in South America, in Central America, in China, lagers
Weather-wise,
everywhere.
you think is that to do with weather and cuisine? I would assume like it pairs with everything, and then lighter food, Asian food tends to be a little lighter.
It could be that, and I've often thought that it had to do with the fact that when they started drinking beer, the Germans were very clearly, well, obviously Belgium's got great beer as well, but Germans have such a history with beer, and I felt like that was them having the influence. I always thought like Mexico, known for their lagers, and they were at one point under control of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So I wondered if maybe it was that. It didn't last very long.
No, but still,
Who knows?
At least the beer did.
But a lot of these places are warm too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And,
You don't want
and lagers go
You don't want a
great.
giant stout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Nice Guinness.
But
nice,
ales are clearly associated. American beers are clearly associated with ales nowadays, and so
Yeah.
like in Mexico, they'll say this is an American beer, and it's an IPA. So now we've co-opted the IPA from Great Britain, and
Right.
now have put our
American.
twist on it. Not ours because we
Right.
don't make one.
Correct.
But I mean, Vermont is one of the
yeah.
greatest IPA states in the union.
Absolutely.
as
Yep.
they say.
Yeah, and now it's considered an American style of beer.
Absolutely. It's very cool to see it happen. Okay, so you took the home brewing, you worked at Magic Hat.
Yep.
And then, what did you get from that?
I came over to Von Trapp. I had a great interview with Johannes Von Trapp. We drove around the property and basically just talked, and that was a very laid-back interview coming from the corporate world of brewing. I was used to driving to Rochester, going over to High Falls, Genesee, and, nothing against that. I have no part of that, nothing wrong with that country. I love that part of the country. But working here now and not working on Route 7 in Burlington, I prefer the commute any day of the week. So, it's a family-run company. It's a great company to work for. And
Yeah.
We can from here we can see the Stowe Mountain Resort. We can actually see the tops of the chairlifts right up there.
Right.
We're looking at the top of the gondola. We're looking at the highest point in Vermont.
Is that the place with the red chairlift things?
the gondola cars. They're like
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
Okay, because I'm
Yep.
not a ski person, but I've seen them here in
Yeah.
the winter. All right, so we're driving past on the way down the 108, and I saw
Yes.
like one of the lodges there, and they had the cars going.
Yep.
I guess people still hike or whatever.
And this is one of the one of the most respected alpine resorts in the East.
Right.
It used to be considered the Aspen of the East, the ski capital of the East. So yes, nice to be at a brewery that's 15 minutes from the mountains.
Absolutely.
Plus, you were really looking for a pay cut, so he went for you were overseeing 56 people, and your team.
And then I went down to one.
He came here and he had one assistant here, and he had to
That's
load
it.
the kegs. He was loading the kegs himself.
Yep.
He and his assistant.
Yep.
And but it meant that he got to be here in time to be part of the planning of this whole new brewery.
Right.
So his fingerprint is all over that design. It was at JP's request that we have indoor bulk malt silos.
Right. So that what we saw before.
Yeah.
Was, I guess, a newer part from when it started. You did mention it.
Been
was
brewing for
newer.
about 3.5 years in this facility.
Okay.
And our
The other
initial
one-
facility was up the hill, and it was a classic story: retrofitted space. Put in moved the bakery upstairs, put the brewery in the basement.
concrete, rip it out. All
Yeah,
that stuff.
exactly.
Right. Okay. Cool. So that gets us to here. So Sam, since we do have a bit more time with JP, we might as well go to both your stories. Do you want to touch on? I don't want to go into it too deep with the family history. I'd seen the movie in the 80s, and I forgot that I didn't realize it was all the same thing. And we actually read the transcript of the movie. It's just so hectic. I forgot how deep that.
There was a lot. There was a lot going on in there. Yeah.
Do you want to maybe just run through that from your perspective and what that is, and then how you got into the beer world from the ski lodge?
Yeah, so the quick version, The Sound of Music, the musical The Sound of Music is based on my family's story.
The hills are alive with the sound of music.
And my grandmother, Maria von Trapp, married the Baron. And in the musical, it seems like they get married and leave Austria immediately, but they actually spent 11 more years in Austria, had a couple kids over there, a couple of daughters. My dad, my grandma was pregnant with my father when they escaped Austria in 1938. They came to the U.S. They were professional singers. They traveled around and sang. They moved up to Vermont in 1942. They family home became a hotel in 1950. They continued to sing professionally through early 1956. Then they spread out, did different things. My dad ended up living overseas. Actually lived in New Guinea. Being an Aussie, you actually know where New Guinea is.
I actually do.
And they gave a concert tour through Oz and New Zealand as well. And I think that's how they came aware of New Guinea. My dad spent a couple years in New Guinea.
That's crazy.
Came over, ended up going to college at Dartmouth College here in New Hampshire, which has a bit of history with beer. And the movie Animal House was actually written by a classmate of my dad's at Dartmouth. And I ended up going to Dartmouth as well. When I was convincing my dad, or trying to convince my dad to try more craft beer in the sort of early to mid 90s.
He was saying
I was a little ahead of the game. Yeah, my friends used to make fun of me. And it's funny too to look at what I drank then that was considered craft, because most of those breweries either don't exist anymore or aren't really considered craft anymore.
Would that be like Yuengling?
Well, so like, I actually didn't know Yuengling. Yuengling wasn't up into New England. Pete's Wicked Ale was one of the ones that, when you bring up Pete's Wicked Ale, a lot of people get a smile on their face. I didn't drink the strawberry one. It was the regular Pete's Wicked. That was a good. How would you describe the regular Pete's Wicked? It was
just like an unfiltered ale. That was like one of the first unfiltered ales.
But it was
ales
good. It was really dark.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to most. Where were they out of?
Mass, I believe. Wicked, I'm assuming Wicked.
Yeah, with the Wicked name.
Somewhere in New England,
But, like Saranac was one of the ones that was out back then. And there was another one that Matt's did. I can't remember. But so I was trying to get my dad to try more craft, and he said, I see what you're talking about, but where are the lagers? And at that point, there were hardly any. I mean, Anchor was out, I think. But, and I'm sure Sam Adams was probably already brewing back then, but I don't remember. I don't remember really having it back then.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said, I see what you're talking about, where are the lagers? Right. He was wondering what these beers that he would have when he went back to Austria, that crisp, clean lager. And he decided he wanted to replicate that. And then he thought about it for a couple decades. I returned to the family business in 2007 after working in the ski industry. And so I had worked in South America and in Colorado. And actually the best brewery in South America at that time had a German name. So it was very clear, Kunstmann beer. It was very clear the German influence. I came back here and started putting a lot of energy into projects that I was doing, and my dad got re-inspired and decided to just totally eclipse all of the projects that I had done by doing something way cooler and way bigger, and we started our first brewery.
Amazing. So you started it with him?
So I was involved. We had a director of food and beverage who was Swiss, who really loved beer, and so he was really excited to put a lot of energy into the planning. We got amazing advice from Greg Noonan, founder of Vermont Pub and Brewery, and a legend in not only the Vermont craft brewing scene, but the U.S. scene. And Greg literally wrote the book on brewing lagers, so he helped us with the design. So it was all just sort of cobbled together for the initial brewery. But then when our first brewmaster did a great job formulating initial recipes, and then he went out to start his own brewery. And his assistant took over for a little bit and then went to join him. And that was when the opportunity came up to bring in JP. And JP was one of our finalists when we were first looking to hire. But as I said, we were not big enough to hire JP off the start. But then when we had the plan for this, we could. And boom, now he's here. And now this facility's here. And it's just cutting edge. And I'm sure we'll be showing some B-roll here of the facility. It is I cannot tell you how many times people show surprise when they come in, and we just hear it over and over again. Yeah. The cleanest brewery I've ever been in. I hear that over and over again.
Now you're referring to specifically the brew lab?
To the brew house, the whole brew house and cellaring. I mean, just everything. And
mess around.
The fact that JP was involved in the decision-making process. The only thing we didn't go with was the automated hops dispenser. For 30 or 40,000 euros. JP said, "There's nothing wrong with opening your tanks occasionally and looking inside." So,
absolutely.
We got everything else. And the indoor bulk malt silos, actually, I believe, unique here in the Northeast.
Can you explain what that is?
So the big malt silos for the bulk malts usually are going to be outside, so they're subject to temperature fluctuations, funky weather. The sun's shining on one side in the morning and the other side in the afternoon. You're bringing in, when it's really cold in the middle of winter, you're bringing in malt at -10 Fahrenheit, and you're mixing it in with hot water, and you're trying to hit your strike temp, but it's shifting that. So indoor bulk malt silos help to control quality on a bunch of different levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that? I guess we didn't. Did we see that?
So we have
that's at the
we're going to
background.
see that. They may be seeing it right now because
Potentially
we
right
will
now.
get that B-roll later, and then you will see it.
I love
Yes.
it. Okay, amazing. So that was, I'm sorry, was that 3.5 years ago?
3.5 years ago.
3.5. So you joined at 3.5?
No,
Or
I was
this-
previous.
you had the other place.
2012.
2012 you joined, I think, yeah.
And so we worked for a couple years at the older brewery while this brewery was in planning. So it was I got to go from a giant 100-barrel brewery to a 15-barrel, 2-vessel, as Sam mentioned. Shoehorned together.
Yeah, way more exercise.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then obviously to a 50-barrel, which we have now, which
Right.
it's cutting edge. As Sam mentioned, Rolec is some of the best brewery equipment in the world. So
Amazing.
we're lucky to have it.
That's super, super sick. I was going to talk about the style. So clearly everything is essentially, could you say every year is lagered? Or are there any ales here?
Yep. So we do have several ales. Obviously, Kölsch being one of them.
Okay.
We also do Hefeweizen. Yep.
Yeah.
So a Hefeweizen style Weiss beer that obviously is an ale, and then we have some future work that we will be doing as well. Alt style, which is an ale, and then we've also talked about doing a straight German ale. So there's many other options out there, obviously, but it is funny that. When we first were an the older brewery, the original name was Trapp Lager Brewery, but we've moved on to Von Trapp Brewing to kind of round out our books a little bit.
First, my dad and I compromised by adding the Von. Trapp Lager did just roll right off the tongue.
It's pretty cool.
And then everyone said, you got to use the Von, name recognition is important. And obviously, anyone who's watching this knows enough about the beer industry to know that it's really crowded. There are a ton of breweries out there. So helping people give your beer that first shot, the name helped. They didn't want us to pigeonhole ourselves with lager. I feel like we could have. There are plenty of breweries that have the ale in their name that make a couple of lagers.
Oh, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
what's funny though is that even of the ales that we make, with the Kölsch being the one that we make the most of, it's still lagered.
Yep,
so,
it's a longer beer.
But yeah, all our beers, and you probably know this, but lager actually just means to store in German. So a lager is a beer that is stored for an extended period of time.
So
Obviously,
3 or 4 weeks,
you've got the top fermenting versus bottom fermenting yeast and all that, but really the name came from the fact that it was being stored. Back when it was first named, they didn't know of different types of yeast here.
So it's okay. I love that you guys have done this. I think it's like it was always interesting to me when I first started discovering, because I'm like I said, I'm from Australia. I was kind of stuck in Canada for a while. Good old immigration is a good time.
Yeah.
So I was stuck for about 3 or 4 years and wasn't able to leave, knowing that some of the best beer in the country is 45 minutes, from the border right there. And so since it's probably been about 2 years or so now, so I've been coming more. And then a friend put me onto you guys. He gave me the double IPL. I had that recently.
Oh yeah,
which is gold.
double IPL done great.
And this was the only other beer I'd had. I just double checked on Untapped. I've had this before in the double IPL, but that was it. And I always thought it was such an interesting move, being from a place like Vermont, like we were just saying before about this is probably arguably the best IPA region, whether it's Vermont or New England in the country. But you guys have chosen very specifically ahead of the craft beer resurgence of lagers and dry hopped, pilsners and stuff, to do that. So I guess that just came from your dad's, love of the beers when he went back home. He wasn't born there, but
wasn't born there, but spent time. Had his first beer there.
Right. So is that an affinity
a few
for this?
since then.
Yeah. So did he just feel like he said there was just where's the lagers at? Because every brewery generally made them. I would say in the 90s, arguably you'd know better than me, that every brewery at least would have lagers, and then the rest of the stuff would come, because I guess Sierra Nevada didn't come out like one of the first hoppy beers, the pale ale, probably in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah, I feel that Sierra's, though, the first lager that I'm aware of from Sierra, I think would have been their Pilsner. I mean, maybe the Oktoberfest that they did as a collaboration with German breweries.
Yeah,
but most of these bigger breweries, just thinking of some of the really good breweries that started making more lagers recently, Lagunitas added their Pilsner further down the line. Firestone Walker, I think added that later.
But you did bring up Anchor. Anchor was one.
Yeah,
of the,
Anchor was out there way early.
So.
Absolutely, Anchor Steam.
Because that's Cali Common, I guess, is what they call it now.
Yeah,
but
it is a lager.
Right.
It's a lager beer.
It's steam beer. That's what they used to
Yeah,
call
so
it.
it's steam beer. Yeah,
We're the only one who can call it that. Everyone else has to call it California Common.
Right.
I really like them. They were an interesting beer, but I didn't realize.
Yeah, that's a lager. Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, Sam Adams. I'm pretty sure Sam Adams, because like there was a group of like 87, 88 breweries to shoots. Vermont Pub and Brewery, you brought up Greg Noonan before. So there is a bunch of those early first go at it. Fritz Maytag being one of them at Anchor Steam, but I'm not quite sure about lagers because, a lot of these home brewers that were doing this in their garage and that started investing capital into making it weren't putting in the capacities to make lagers because the banks wanted their money, and lagers take 40 days to make as opposed to an ale where here's a check in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So,
and if you're home brewing and you don't have precise control of fermentation temps and cold storage, so it's so much easier to home brew lager, and it's easier to mass produce. Or ales, of course. And easier to mass produce the ales as well. So, I think that really is what it came down to: flipping the tanks quicker and making it. It's really hard to hide a mistake in a 4.9 ABV, 20 IBU beer that has no other additives.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
It strikes me as a risk almost, like it's a larger. In today's climate, I don't think so much, but when you guys started, it seemed like it would have been like it's a risk that kind of like it's almost like you preempted the interest into it to make only German style beers. I think it's very rare. I hadn't seen that before, and I think it's more so here in Vermont when everyone's IPA and hop obsessed. It was considered a risk, and plenty of people told my dad that, and I think that only galvanized his resolve to stick with it. Yeah, and it was I gotta say when we first produced in this facility in 2015, sort of did our first brews, spring of 2015. First went to market late May, early June of 2015. Got our first GABF medal out of this facility in September of 2015. Hell yeah!
So a silver medal for the Pilsner. And it was pretty neat because one of the big takeaways as the journalists were writing up the GABF event, one of the big takeaways was lagers are back. So it's a pretty neat vindication for my dad, who had been having to tell bankers and distributors and all these other people. Everyone was saying, you can't go to market without an IPA. Right. And my dad said, watch me. So it was kind of neat. Now that said, we would probably sell more beer right now if we made an IPA, but sometimes when you draw a line in the sand, you also say we're going to stick with it. And one of the sort of fun things that we talked about briefly earlier is that we are doing some contract brewing for some other brands that we're really proud to work with. And so that's a chance for JP to show people the quality of IPAs that he's able to brew with our system. Right. So we do actually get to make some IPAs. They're just not under the Von Trapp name. Right. Yeah. So that was kind of my next question. I was going to say, we spoke about this earlier, JP, as a brewer, I assume it's kind of like part of the fun to be like, all right, we're going to make this now, we're going to do, and they're all different. Otherwise, it becomes this like machine, and you feel like a robot. I've heard, particularly at a brewery like Magic Hat, just pumping it out. You're like making number 9 all day, that would be annoying. So, I guess, is that cool for you to be able to make these really high quality German style beers and then be able to sort of try something completely off-brand and something sort of fun as a brewer, or is it like...
To me, fun is making lagers. Not fun is making these giant hoppy beers because I'm putting in 500 pounds of hops, so I'm up and down these stairs all day long. That's when I wanted to get that hop cannon.
What does that do? Just puts it in from the top. Oh, those things that are up the top?
They instantly put the load of hops in as like a safety precaution, so you don't need to open like a cover. Yeah, exactly. So it just injects it into the kettle.
Yeah, if we'd known we were going to be doing all that contracting.
I mean, not to mention that, but our whirlpool isn't like necessarily cut. So whirlpools, these true piles of spent hops after their brews are gigantic, and we have a lager brew house, so they just weren't cut correctly. So we do have a higher loss for that. But back to your point, IPAs. To each its own. I love IPAs. I like a nice balanced IPA. There's so many IPAs out there that almost look like orange juice. Again, I'm not. It's
you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Just see if we can find you some up.
We do. But to me, it's just it's an acquired. Like some people like one style of music, and other people like another style. I enjoy making these beers. They're challenging. So if we did have an issue, we'd be able to see it right away. We have a great staff who take tremendous pride in what we do. So it's not necessarily too repetitive, especially as Sam mentioned, we do 12 different styles, so we have variety in our life, So and then every now and then we do sprinkle in these beers with adjuncts and hops that we can have fun. I mean, fun as well, So.
Right. Last question was, where can people find you guys online?
You can find us at
Trapp Family?
so trappfamily.com
Yep.
and vontrappbrewing.com.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's where you get it.
and keep an eye out for us. We've been enjoying expanding into some other states, so keep an eye out for us.
Absolutely.
We're in 10 states in New England and the Northeast now.
I love it.
Yeah, it's exciting.
That's great,
Proud of
man.
my dad.
I love it, man. Very cool. Thank you so much for having us. Really, really
Thank you.
appreciate it, Sam. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Guys, if you enjoyed the episode, mate, smash this thumbs up, hit subscribe below, and hit the notification bell so you know when the new episodes drop. Follow us on social media at BAOS Podcast, and check out the long-form audio so you can hear very attractive gentlemen like Sam right here, and JP, who's also very attractive. Yap about great beer stuff. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. That is it, guys. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Cheers.